The diamond on Isla's finger caught the morning light like a shard of ice, blinding her as she struggled to open her eyes. Her head throbbed with a pain that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her racing heart, and for a moment, she couldn't remember where she was or how she'd gotten there. The sheets beneath her were silk, expensive, unfamiliar silk that whispered against her skin as she sat up. The room spun slightly, and she pressed her palm against her temple, trying to steady herself. This wasn't her apartment. This wasn't anywhere she recognized. The bedroom was vast, decorated in shades of charcoal and cream, with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked a city she couldn't quite place through the morning fog. Everything screamed wealth, the kind of wealth that made her journalist's salary look like pocket change. A dress she didn't remember wearing lay crumpled on the floor beside the bed, black and elegant, with a torn hem. Her breath caught as she looked down at her left hand again. The ring wasn't just any diamond. It was massive, surrounded by smaller stones that formed an intricate pattern she'd seen somewhere before. Something about it made her stomach twist with an emotion she couldn't name. "You're awake." Isla's head snapped toward the voice, her heart leaping into her throat. A man stood in the doorway, perfectly still, watching her with eyes the color of smoke. He was tall, dressed in a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with tattoos that looked more like art than decoration. His face was sharp, almost cruel in its beauty, with a jawline that could cut glass and dark hair that fell carelessly across his forehead. There was something predatory in the way he looked at her, like a wolf studying wounded prey. "Who are you?" Isla's voice came out hoarse, unfamiliar to her own ears. "Where am I?" The man's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. He stepped into the room, and she noticed the way he moved, controlled, deliberate, like every gesture was calculated. "You don't remember?" "Remember what?" Panic clawed at her chest. She pulled the sheet tighter around herself, suddenly aware of how exposed she felt. "What happened last night?" "Why am I?" "You're in my home, Mrs. Corvina." His accent was subtle, European, impossible to place. "And as for what happened?" He paused, his gaze dropping to the ring on her finger. "We got married at midnight." The words hit her like a physical blow. Married. Midnight. None of it made sense. "That's impossible," she whispered, shaking her head. "I don't even know you." "I was at the jewelry auction last night, covering the Valente collection sale for the—" Her words died as a flash of memory struck her. Champagne. A man's hand on her elbow. A whispered warning she couldn't quite hear. The glitter of diamonds under auction lights. Then nothing but darkness. The man, Corvina, he'd called himself, tilted his head slightly, studying her reaction. "The auction." "Yes. That's where I found you." His voice dropped lower, intimate and dangerous. "Or rather, where you found yourself in more trouble than you could handle." "I don't understand." "You will." He moved closer, and Isla's instinct screamed at her to run. But there was nowhere to go. "The real question, Mogli Mia, is whether you'll survive long enough to remember why you came looking for me in the first place." The Italian endearment, "my wife," sent chills down her spine. "I wasn't looking for you," she insisted, but even as she said it, doubt crept in. Had she been? Why couldn't she remember? Corvina reached into his pocket and pulled out her phone. The screen was shattered. Then perhaps you can explain why you had my personal number stored under Dangerous Truth in your contacts. He set the phone on the nightstand beside her, next to something else that made her blood run cold. Her press badge. And beneath it, a photograph of a man she'd been investigating for months, a notorious mafia boss suspected of running half the city's underground operations. The man standing before her wore the same face. What would you do if you woke up married to your most dangerous investigation? Drop your thoughts below, this gets darker. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. A special thank you to everyone who has stayed with me so far. If you're already hooked by Isla's dangerous awakening and want to uncover the truth behind her mysterious marriage to the mafia boss, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll have another story for you that's just as gripping as this one, and trust me, you don't want to miss it. Now, let's dive in. Isla stared at the photograph, her mind racing through months of investigative work that suddenly felt like a trap closing around her. Rodrigo Corvina. The ghost of the underground, the man who moved through high society and dark alleys with equal ease, leaving no trace except whispered rumors and bodies that were never found. And she'd married him. I didn't come looking for you, she said, forcing strength into her voice that she didn't feel. I'm a journalist, not a fool. Are you certain those aren't the same thing? Corvina moved to the window, his silhouette dark against the morning light. You've been chasing my shadow for 6 months, Tesoro. Writing articles that dance around accusations you can't prove. Asking questions in places where questions get people killed. How did he know about her work? Her articles had been careful, never naming him directly, always maintaining plausible deniability. I write about organized crime. That doesn't mean I was targeting you specifically. He laughed, a low, dangerous sound that made her skin prickle. You interviewed 3 of my former associates. You traced shell companies back to properties I own. Last month, you tried to bribe my accountant. He turned to face her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. You weren't just investigating me, Isla. You were hunting me. The use of her first name felt too intimate, too possessive. She lifted her chin, refusing to show fear even though her heart hammered against her ribs. If that's true, then why am I alive? Why this? She gestured at the ring, at the room, at the insanity of their situation, instead of at the bottom of the harbor. Something flickered across his face, an emotion too quick to catch. Because you're worth more to me alive than dead. And because, he paused, his jaw tightening, you don't remember what happened at that auction, but I do. You saved my life. The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Isla's mind scrambled for purchase, for any memory that would make sense of this. I don't understand. The Valente collection wasn't just jewelry being auctioned. Corvina approached the bed slowly, deliberately, like he was approaching a skittish animal. It was a cover for something far more valuable. Information. Encrypted data hidden in one of the pieces. Several very dangerous people wanted it, and you. He stopped at the foot of the bed, his hands gripping the frame. You got caught in the crossfire when you noticed something you shouldn't have. Fragments of memory flickered like broken glass. A necklace under lights. Numbers etched into a clasp that seemed wrong. A man's angry whisper, she saw it, she knows too much. Her instinct to run, but then. There was a gun, she whispered, the memory surfacing like something from a dream. someone pointed a gun at me. Corvina's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. You threw a champagne bottle at his head and gave me 3 seconds to disarm him. 3 seconds that saved my life and made you the most fascinating problem I've ever encountered. Isla's hands trembled. She remembered the weight of the bottle, the crystal shattering, the chaos that followed. So you married me? That's your solution to a problem? I married you to keep you alive. His voice dropped to something almost gentle, almost human. The man you hit works for Viktor Zolotov. You've heard that name, yes? She had. Russian mob. Ruthless. Unpredictable. Her blood turned to ice. Zolotov doesn't forgive witnesses, Corvina continued. But he respects tradition. Old world rules. He won't touch another man's wife, not without starting a war he can't afford. He moved around the bed, closer now, and Isla could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive that made her dizzy. So I made you mine. Publicly. Legally. At midnight, with enough witnesses from both our worlds to make it binding. You can't just marry someone without their consent, she protested, even as she wondered if somehow, impossibly, she had consented. Corvina reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His touch was surprisingly gentle. You said yes, Isla. You said yes because in that moment, you understood the choice, become my wife or become Zolotov's victim. His thumb traced her jawline, and she hated the way her body responded to his touch. You chose survival. You chose me. I don't remember choosing anything. Then let me remind you of everything. His smile was dark promise and dangerous territory. Starting with why you're going to stay my wife long after Zolotov is no longer a threat. Before Isla could respond, the bedroom door burst open with a force that made her jump. A woman strode in, tall, elegant, wearing a blood-red suit that matched her lipstick. Her dark hair was pulled back severely, emphasizing sharp cheekbones and eyes that assessed Isla like a threat to be eliminated. We have a problem, the woman announced, ignoring Isla entirely. Zolotov knows about the marriage. He's calling it invalid. Rodrigo's demeanor shifted instantly. The almost gentle man who'd been touching her face disappeared, replaced by something cold and lethal. On what grounds? He claims she was drugged during the ceremony. That she couldn't have given proper consent. The woman's gaze finally landed on Isla, and there was something calculating in her expression. Was she? No. Rodrigo's answer was immediate, but Isla caught the slight tension in his jaw. I don't remember, Isla interjected, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. I don't remember anything after the auction hall. The woman's perfectly sculpted eyebrow arched. Convenient. Mira, Rodrigo's voice held warning. Watch your tone with my wife. Mira. The name triggered something in Isla's memory. Mira Volkov, Rodrigo's second-in-command, rumored to be as deadly as she was beautiful. The woman who supposedly handled all of Corvina's difficult situations. And from the way Mira was looking at Rodrigo now, with barely concealed possession and anger, Isla understood another complication she hadn't anticipated. This woman didn't just work for Rodrigo Corvina. She wanted him. Your wife, Mira repeated, each word dripping with disdain. For how long, Rodrigo? A week? A month? Until Zolotov gets bored of his tantrum? She pulled out her phone, tapping the screen with sharp, precise movements. He's demanding proof. Real proof. He wants to see you two together, acting like an actual married couple, or he's declaring the contract void. Then he'll see it, Rodrigo said smoothly. When? Where? Myra's smile was sharp as a blade. Because he wants to see it tonight. At the Serpent's Denver. His territory. His rules. Isla's stomach dropped. Even she'd heard of the Serpent's Den, a nightclub that served as neutral ground for the city's most dangerous players. Walking into that place was like walking into a lion's den covered in fresh meat. That's a trap, Isla said, looking between them. You can't seriously be considering. We don't have a choice, Rodrigo interrupted, his eyes never leaving Mira. If Zolotov invalidates the marriage, Isla becomes fair game. Not just for him, but for everyone who wants to use her as leverage against me. Against you? Isla stood, the sheet falling away. She didn't care that she was only wearing the slip she'd apparently slept in. I'm not your property. I didn't ask for any of this protection. Rodrigo turned to her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. No. You didn't ask. But you have it anyway, whether you want it or not. Because the moment you saved my life, you became part of this world. My world. He moved closer, his presence overwhelming. And in my world, Isla, I protect what's mine. I'm not yours. You are. He held up her left hand, the diamond catching the light. This ring says you are. The contract signed at midnight says you are. Every major crime family in this city acknowledges you are. His voice dropped to something intimate and dangerous. The only person who doesn't seem to understand that is you. Mira cleared her throat, breaking the charged moment. How touching. But unless you plan to convince Zolotov with a passionate speech about ownership, we need a strategy. He'll have men watching your every move tonight. Any sign this marriage is a sham, and she's dead before dawn. Then we make it believable, Rodrigo said, still holding Isla's gaze. We make them see what they need to see. Which is? Isla challenged, even though part of her was terrified of the answer. Rodrigo's smile was slow, predatory, and absolutely devastating. A man completely obsessed with his new wife. A woman who can't keep her hands off her husband. He reached up, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture possessive and intimate. Think you can play that role, Mowgli Mia? Can you pretend to want me for one night? Isla's heart raced. The problem wasn't whether she could pretend. The problem was that some treacherous part of her wasn't sure it would be pretending at all. I'll do whatever it takes to stay alive, she said carefully. But after tonight, after this threat is handled, we discuss ending this marriage. Something flickered in Rodrigo's eyes, disappointment? Anger? It was gone too quickly to identify. Of course. After tonight. He stepped back, breaking the intimate bubble they created. Mira, arrange everything. Isla needs appropriate clothing, jewelry, the full presentation. Anything else? Mira's tone was ice. Yes. Rodrigo's jaw tightened. Make sure our guest room is prepared. Isla will want her own space to get ready. Myra's eyes widened slightly, the first crack in her composed facade. Guest room? Rodrigo, if this is supposed to be convincing. I said what I said. His voice held finality. Now go. Mira left with barely controlled fury, and Isla found herself alone with Rodrigo again. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken questions. Why? Isla asked quietly. Why give me my own room if we're supposed to be newlyweds? Rodrigo moved to the door, pausing with his hand on the frame. When he looked back at her, something in his expression made her chest tighten. Because when you finally come to my bed, Isla, I want it to be your choice. Not because I forced you. Not because circumstances demanded it. His smile was dark and full of promise. I want you to choose me. Then he was gone, leaving Isla standing in the silken shadows, wondering if she'd just been given freedom or issued the most dangerous challenge of her life. The guest room was smaller than Rodrigo's master suite but no less luxurious. Isla stood before a full-length mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. The dress Mira had selected was a masterpiece of seduction, midnight blue silk that clung to every curve, with a neckline that plunged just low enough to be dangerous and a slit that ran up her thigh. She looked like she belonged in Rodrigo's world. That terrified her more than anything else. You clean up well, Myra's voice cut through her thoughts. The woman leaned against the doorframe, a glass of wine in her hand. For a journalist. Isla met her gaze in the mirror. Is there something you want to say to me, Mira? Several things. Mira entered the room, circling Isla like a predator assessing prey. But let's start with the most important one. Don't fall for him. The bluntness caught Isla off guard. Excuse me? Rodrigo. Mira took a slow sip of wine. I've watched women fall for him for years. They see the power, the danger, that face, and they think they can tame him. They think they're special. Her smile was razor-sharp. They're always wrong. I'm not trying to tame anyone, Isla said, forcing her voice to remain steady. This marriage is temporary. A business arrangement. Is it? Mira moved closer, her perfume, something expensive and lethal, filling the space between them. Then why did he give you your own room? Why does he look at you like you're a puzzle he's desperate to solve? She set her wine glass down on the dresser with deliberate care. I've known Rodrigo for 8 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Isla's heart raced, but she refused to show weakness. Maybe he just respects that I didn't ask for any of this. Respect. Mira laughed, the sound hollow. Rodrigo Corvina doesn't respect obstacles, darling. He eliminates them. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a whisper. So ask yourself, why are you still alive? Why marry you when he could have just hidden you away until the threat passed? The question had been haunting Isla since she woke up. Maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe the marriage was the only way to protect me. Or maybe, Myra's eyes glittered dangerously, you remind him of someone he lost. Someone he couldn't save. She straightened, her mask of composure sliding back into place. Just a friendly warning from one woman to another, don't mistake his obsession for love. Men like Rodrigo don't love. They possess. Before Isla could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. Rodrigo entered without waiting for permission, and the air in the room immediately changed, charged, electric, dangerous. He'd changed into a black suit that probably cost more than Isla's annual salary, fitted perfectly to his muscular frame. His hair was swept back, revealing the sharp angles of his face, and when his eyes found Isla, they darkened with something that made her stomach flip. "Leave us," he said to Mira without looking away from Isla. Myra's jaw tightened, but she obeyed, brushing past Rodrigo with barely controlled fury. The door closed with a soft click, and suddenly Isla was very aware of how alone they were. "You look." Rodrigo crossed the room slowly, deliberately, his gaze traveling over her in a way that made her skin burn. "Dangerous." That was the goal, wasn't it? Isla lifted her chin, refusing to be intimidated. "To make everyone believe we can't keep our hands off each other?" "Yes." He stopped inches away from her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "But there's one problem with our plan." "What's that?" "I'm not sure I'll be pretending." His hand rose to her neck, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. The touch was gentle, reverent, nothing like the dangerous man he was supposed to be. "You're making this very difficult, Isla." "Making what difficult?" Her voice came out breathier than she intended. "Keeping my promise." His eyes searched hers, and she saw something vulnerable flickering in their depths. "To let you choose." Isla's breath caught. She should step back. Should put distance between them. Instead, she found herself asking, what did Mira mean? "About me reminding you of someone you lost?" Rodrigo's expression shuddered immediately, the vulnerable moment vanishing. "Mira talks too much." "Rodrigo. We need to establish some ground rules for tonight." His voice turned businesslike, but his hand remained on her neck, his thumb still tracing patterns on her skin. "At the Serpent's Den, you stay by my side. Always. You don't speak to anyone without my permission. You don't accept drinks from anyone but me." "I'm not a child," Isla protested. "No." His grip tightened slightly, possessive. "You're my wife. And in that place, surrounded by men who would love nothing more than to see me fall, you're also my greatest weakness." He leaned closer, his lips nearly brushing her ear. "Do you understand what that means? If someone wants to hurt me, they'll come for you first." A shiver ran down her spine, fear and something else she didn't want to name. "Then maybe we shouldn't go." "We don't have a choice." He pulled back, his eyes burning into hers. "But I need you to trust me tonight, Isla." "Can you do that?" "Trust him?" She barely knew him. He'd married her without her full consent, dragged her into a world of violence and danger, and now expected her to walk into a death trap holding his hand. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something that made her hesitate. Beneath the danger, beneath the cold calculation, there was genuine fear. Not for himself, for her. "I'll trust you," she heard herself say. "But you have to promise me something in return." "What?" "That you'll tell me the truth. About everything. About why you really married me. About who I remind you of." She held his gaze, refusing to back down. "About what you're not telling me about that night at the auction." Rodrigo's expression was unreadable. For a long moment, he said nothing, and Isla thought he might refuse. Then, slowly, he nodded. "After tonight," he said quietly. "Survive tonight with me, and I'll tell you everything." It wasn't exactly a promise. But as his fingers interlaced with hers and he led her toward the door, toward the Serpent's Den and whatever waited for them there, Isla realized it was the closest thing to honesty she was going to get. and God help her, it was enough. The serpent's den lived up to its reputation. Red velvet and gold accents created an atmosphere of decadent danger, while crystal chandeliers cast shadows that seemed to move with malicious intent. Every face Isla passed looked like it belonged on a wanted poster, and the weight of their stares made her skin crawl. Rodrigo's hand pressed against the small of her back, proprietary and protective. "Breathe," he murmured in her ear. "You look terrified." "I am terrified," she whispered back. "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." His fingers traced small circles on her spine. "But you need to look like the only thing you're afraid of is how much you want me." Isla turned her face toward his, close enough that anyone watching would think they were sharing an intimate moment. "You're asking a lot." "I know." His eyes softened slightly. "But you're stronger than you think, Tesoro." They moved through the crowd, and Isla forced herself to play the part, leaning into Rodrigo's touch, laughing at something he whispered, letting her hand rest possessively on his chest. It should have felt like acting. Instead, it felt disturbingly natural. Viktor Zolotov waited for them in a private booth overlooking the club floor. He was older than Isla expected, maybe 60, with silver hair and cold blue eyes that missed nothing. 2 bodyguards flanked him, their hands resting casually on visible weapons. "Corvina." Zolotov's accent was thick, Russian. "And this must be the bride who doesn't remember her own wedding." "Viktor." Rodrigo's voice was cordial, but Isla felt the tension in his body. "Thank you for the invitation." "Invitation." Zolotov smiled, showing too many teeth. "Is that what we're calling this?" His gaze shifted to Isla, assessing her like merchandise. "Come closer, girl. Let me see what was worth starting a war over." Isla's instinct screamed at her to refuse, but Rodrigo's hand squeezed her waist, a silent message. She stepped forward, keeping her chin high. Zolotov reached out and grabbed her left hand, studying the ring. "Beautiful piece. Corvina family heirloom, yes? I remember when Rodrigo's mother wore it." His eyes narrowed. "Before she was murdered, of course." Isla's blood ran cold. She looked at Rodrigo, but his expression remained carefully neutral. "Ancient history, Viktor," Rodrigo said smoothly. "We're here to discuss the present." "Are we?" Zolotov released Isla's hand and leaned back, pulling out a tablet. "Then let's discuss this." He turned the screen toward them. Isla's heart stopped. On the screen was a video, surveillance footage from the jewelry auction. But it wasn't from the main hall. It was from a private corridor, timestamped at 11:47 p.m. In the video, Isla saw herself, but she wasn't running from danger. She was walking calmly beside a man whose face was turned away from the camera. They stopped at a doorway, and the man turned toward her. It was Rodrigo. And Isla was kissing him. Not a forced kiss. Not a surprised kiss. A deep, passionate kiss that looked like they'd done it 1,000 times before. "No," Isla breathed, stepping back. I don't remember." "The timestamp," Zolotov continued, his smile widening, "is 43 minutes before your supposed emergency wedding." "Interesting, no? You don't remember the wedding, but this." He gestured at the screen. "This looks very much like 2 people who know each other well." Isla's mind raced. She'd kissed Rodrigo before the wedding? Before the champagne bottle incident? That meant. It means, Zolotov said, as if reading her thoughts, that perhaps this marriage wasn't quite the desperate measure Corvina claims. Perhaps you two had other plans that night. Perhaps, he leaned forward, you were working together all along. That's ridiculous, Isla protested, but her voice shook. She turned to Rodrigo. Tell him. Tell him I wasn't, we weren't. But Rodrigo's expression stopped her cold. He wasn't denying it. He was watching her with an intensity that made her stomach drop. The truth, Corvina, Zolotov demanded. Or I declare this marriage a fraud, and we settle this the old way. Rodrigo was silent for a long moment. Then he smiled, that dangerous, devastating smile that made Isla's heart race for all the wrong reasons. Fine. You want the truth? He turned to Isla, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath catch. We met 6 months ago, Isla. Not at the auction. 6 months ago, when you first started investigating me. What? Isla stumbled back, but Rodrigo caught her arm. You came to one of my clubs, pretending to be just another journalist looking for a story. But I knew what you were really after. The Valente collection. The encrypted data. His grip tightened. So I made you an offer. Help me recover the data before my enemies did, and I'd give you the story of a lifetime. No. Isla shook her head violently. I would never. You said yes, Rodrigo continued, his voice soft and relentless. You said yes because you wanted justice for your sister. The world tilted. My sister? Elena. The name dropped like a bomb. Your older sister who died 3 years ago in a random mugging that was never solved. Except it wasn't random, was it? She stumbled onto something she shouldn't have. Something connected to the Valente collection. Something that got her killed. Tears burned Isla's eyes. Elena. God, Elena. She'd spent 3 years trying to find answers about her sister's death, hitting dead ends at every turn. You're lying, she whispered, but it sounded weak even to her own ears. Rodrigo pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. It was Elena, alive and smiling, wearing a necklace Isla had never seen before. The same necklace from the Valente auction. You came to me for revenge, Isla. For justice. For the truth about what happened to your sister. Rodrigo's voice was gentle now, almost tender. And I promised you that if you helped me, I'd give you everything. The people responsible. The evidence. Everything. Isla's knees weakened. Fragments of memory flashed through her mind, not from that night, but from before. Meeting Rodrigo in shadows. Planning. Agreeing to something that seemed impossible. Hissing him in that corridor because somewhere along the way, the partnership had become something more. The wedding, she breathed. Was it real? Or was that part of the plan too? Rodrigo's expression was unreadable. That depends on which answer you want to hear. Zolotov laughed, a harsh sound that cut through the tension. Well, well. A love story and a revenge plot. How theatrical. He stood, his guards moving with him. But it doesn't change the facts, Corvina. This marriage is built on deception. The girl is a liability. And I? And you, a new voice cut through the air, female and deadly calm, are about to make a very big mistake. Everyone turned. Standing at the entrance to the booth, holding a gun with professional ease, was Mira. But she wasn't pointing it at Zolotov. She was pointing it at Isla. "I told you not to fall for him," Mira said, her smile cold as ice. "But you just couldn't help yourself, could you? Now you've become a problem. And I eliminate problems." Time seemed to freeze. Isla stared at the gun pointed at her chest, her mind struggling to process what was happening. Mira. The woman who'd warned her, who'd seemed jealous but ultimately on Rodrigo's side, was now the one holding her life in her hands. Mira. Rodrigo's voice was deadly calm, but Isla felt him shift beside her, positioning himself between her and the weapon. "Put the gun down." "No." Mira's hand was steady, her eyes cold. "I've stood by and watched you make stupid decisions before, Rodrigo, but this one ends now. She's a journalist. A liability. And worse, she's made you soft." "This isn't the time or place," Rodrigo warned, his body coiled like a spring ready to release. "Isn't it?" Mira's laugh was bitter. "Zolotov wants proof your marriage is a lie. Well, here's proof. You'd never choose a random girl over 8 years of loyalty. Over me." Her voice cracked on the last word, revealing the raw wound beneath her composed exterior. Zolotov watched the scene unfold with amused interest, making no move to intervene. His guards had their weapons drawn, but they weren't pointing them at anyone, just waiting to see how this played out. "You think I chose her over you?" Rodrigo's voice was quiet, dangerous. "Mira, there was never anything to choose from. You and I." "Don't." Mira cut him off, her eyes glistening. "Don't you dare tell me I imagined what we had. The late nights planning operations. The way you looked at me after we took down the Marchetti family. You said I was indispensable." "You are," Rodrigo said, and Isla heard genuine regret in his voice. "But not like that. Never like that." The rejection hit Mira like a physical blow. Her face twisted with pain and rage. "Then you won't mind if I remove the distraction." Everything happened at once. Mira's finger tightened on the trigger. Rodrigo lunged forward. And Isla, driven by instinct and fragments of training she didn't remember learning, grabbed a champagne bottle from a nearby table and hurled it. The bottle struck Mira's arm just as she fired. The shot went wide, shattering a crystal chandelier above them. Glass rained down like deadly snow as chaos erupted in the club. Zolotov's guards moved, but Rodrigo was faster. He grabbed Isla's wrist and pulled her through the panicking crowd, his grip iron-strong and absolutely certain. Behind them, Isla heard Mira screaming, words in Russian and Italian that needed no translation. They burst through a back exit into an alley. Rain had started falling, cold and sudden, soaking through Isla's dress in seconds. Rodrigo's car, a sleek black Mercedes, waited with the engine running. He shoved her into the passenger seat and floored the accelerator before she'd even closed the door. "What the hell just happened?" Isla gasped, her hands shaking as adrenaline crashed through her system. Mira just declared war. Rodrigo's jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. "And Zolotov will use it to his advantage." "She tried to kill me." "Yes." He took a sharp corner, tires squealing. "And she'll try again. Mira doesn't miss twice." Isla's mind raced, trying to piece together the shattered fragments of her reality. You said we've been working together for 6 months. That I came to you about Elena. If that's true, why don't I remember any of it? Rodrigo's silence was answer enough. What did you do to me? Isla's voice rose, panic and fury mixing into something explosive. Did you drug me? Manipulate my memories? What? I protected you. Rodrigo slammed his hand against the steering wheel. You were getting too close, asking too many questions, and the people involved in Elena's death were closing in. You were going to get yourself killed, so he stopped, his jaw working. So you what? Isla demanded. Erased my memory? Made me forget 6 months of my life? 3 days, he said quietly. Not 6 months. Just the last 3 days. The admission hit her like a punch to the gut. Why? Because you discovered something at that auction that put a target on your back bigger than anything we'd anticipated. The encrypted data in the Valente collection, it wasn't just information about criminal operations. It was a list. He glanced at her, his eyes haunted. A list of everyone involved in your sister's murder. Including people in positions of power who would burn the city down to keep that secret buried. Isla's breath caught. You're saying? I'm saying that 3 days ago, you looked at me and said you were going to expose everything. Every name. Every crime. No matter the cost. His voice dropped. And I couldn't let you die for the truth. Not like Elena did. Tears burned Isla's eyes. So you took my choice away. Married me to protect me, erased my memories to keep me safe. To keep you alive. Rodrigo's composure cracked. Do you think I wanted this? To see you look at me like I'm a stranger? To watch you struggle to remember what he stopped, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. What? Isla whispered. But before he could answer, the rear windshield exploded. Bullets tore through the car as a motorcycle pulled alongside them, Mira, her face twisted with rage, firing with deadly precision. Rodrigo swerved hard, and Isla screamed as they careened toward the bridge railing. Metal screamed against metal. The world tilted. And then they were airborne, the car plunging toward the dark water below. In that suspended moment before impact, Rodrigo's hand found Isla's. His eyes met hers, and she saw everything he hadn't said, the truth he'd hidden, the feelings he'd tried to bury, the choice he'd made to save her at the cost of everything they'd built together. I love you, he said, his voice barely audible over the rush of wind. I'm sorry I made you forget that you loved me too. Then the car hit the water, and everything went black. Would you sacrifice your memories for love, or your love for the truth? Tell us what you'd choose. Cold. That was Isla's first conscious thought as water flooded the car. Cold and dark and suffocating. Her lungs screamed for air, panic clawing at her chest as she struggled against her seatbelt. Strong hands gripped her shoulders. Rodrigo. Even in the chaos, even drowning, he was trying to save her. He pulled her close, his lips finding hers, not a kiss, but sharing air from his lungs. The gesture was so intimate, so desperate, that something inside Isla cracked open. Memories flooded back like the water surrounding them, not all of them, but enough. Rodrigo's smile the first night they met. His hand steady on hers as he taught her to shoot. The way he'd held her when she finally broke down about Elena. Their first kiss, slow and careful, like he was afraid she'd shatter. His voice in the darkness, "I'll help you get justice, but I can't let you die for it." And her response, "Then keep me alive." Isla's eyes flew open underwater, meeting Rodrigo's gaze. She saw the exact moment he realized she was remembering, shock, hope, and something that looked like relief flooding his features. She grabbed his face with both hands and kissed him back, a real kiss, a promise, an answer to everything he'd confessed. Then she pointed upward with urgency. They had to survive this. Together. Rodrigo kicked out the already cracked windshield, and they swam toward the surface. Isla's lungs burned, her dress threatening to drag her down, but Rodrigo's arm around her waist kept her moving. Up, up, until they broke through the surface gasping and alive. The bridge loomed above them, emergency lights flashing. Myra's motorcycle was gone, but Isla knew she hadn't given up. A woman scorned and trained as an assassin wouldn't stop until one of them was dead. The warehouse, Isla choked out as they swam toward the embankment. On 5th Street. That's where you said we stored the backup files. Rodrigo stared at her, water streaming down his face. You remember. Not everything. She grabbed the concrete edge, pulling herself up with trembling arms. But enough. Enough to know that I chose you. That we chose each other. She turned to face him, her eyes blazing. And enough to know that I'm not running from the truth anymore. Not from Zolotov, not from Mira, and not from whoever killed my sister. Rodrigo hauled himself onto the embankment beside her, his expression fierce. Isla, the people on that list are about to face justice. She stood, wringing water from her dress. You took my memories to protect me, and I understand why. But I'm not that scared girl anymore, Rodrigo. I'm your wife. Your partner. She held out her hand, the wedding ring still glinting on her finger. So let's finish what we started. Something shifted in Rodrigo's expression, pride, love, and a dangerous determination that matched her own. He took her hand, pulling her against him in a fierce embrace. You're going to get us both killed. Probably. She smiled against his chest, feeling his heart pound in rhythm with hers. But we'll die telling the truth. Elena deserves that much. She deserves more. Rodrigo pulled back, cupping her face with both hands. She deserves to see her baby sister take down everyone who thought they could silence your family. His kiss was hard and claiming, full of promise and possession. And I'm going to make sure you survive long enough to do it. They moved through the dark streets like ghosts, soaked and dangerous. Rodrigo made 3 calls, activating loyal contacts who owed him favors. Within 20 minutes, they had dry clothes, weapons, and a car waiting at a safe location. But as they approached the warehouse on 5th Street, Isla's instincts screamed warning. Something was wrong. Rodrigo, wait. The warehouse exploded in a ball of fire that lit up the night sky. Flames consumed everything, the building, the evidence, their backup plan. And standing across the street, illuminated by the inferno, was Mira. She wasn't alone. Beside her stood Viktor Zolotov, and behind them, at least a dozen armed men. But that wasn't what made Isla's blood run cold. Standing with them, very much alive and smiling, was a woman Isla had mourned for 3 years. Elena. Her sister. Her dead sister. The woman whose murder had started this entire nightmare. Elena stepped forward, her smile sad and somehow apologetic. Hello, baby sister. I think it's time we talked about what really happened 3 years ago. Isla's world shattered and reformed in the space of a heartbeat. Elena. Alive. Standing with their enemies like she belonged there. No. The word came out broken, disbelieving. You're dead. I saw the police reports. The crime scene photos. You saw what we wanted you to see. Elena stepped closer, and in the firelight, Isla could see how much her sister had changed. Harder. Colder. Nothing like the warm, protective older sister she remembered. The body in those photos wasn't me, Isla. It was a Jane Doe who resembled me enough to pass initial identification. Rodrigo's arm tightened around Isla's waist, steadying her. You've been alive this whole time, he said, his voice deadly calm. Working with Zolotov. Using your sister's grief to, what? Flush out your enemies? Not just my enemies. Elena's smile was bitter. Our father's enemies. Our family's enemies. She looked at Isla with something that might have been regret. Did you really think Dad was just a simple accountant, baby sister? He was a money launderer for half the criminal organizations in this city. And when he tried to go legitimate, they killed him for it. Isla's mind reeled. Their father had died of a heart attack when she was 16. At least, that's what she'd been told. You're lying, Isla said, but her voice wavered. I wish I was. Elena pulled out a tablet, tapping it twice. The Valente collection? The encrypted data everyone's so desperate to get? It's Dad's insurance policy. Every transaction, every name, every dirty secret he ever handled. He hid it years ago, and I've spent the last 3 years trying to find it before someone else did. So you faked your death, Rodrigo said. Let your sister believe you were murdered. Put her through hell. To keep her safe. Elena's composure cracked. If they knew I was still looking for the data, they'd have used Isla against me. Better she think I was dead and live a normal life than become collateral damage. But I didn't live a normal life. Isla's voice grew stronger, anger burning through the shock. I spent 3 years trying to find your killer. I became an investigative journalist because of you. I walked into Rodrigo's world hunting for answers because I thought, her voice broke. I thought someone needed to pay for what happened to you. And now someone will. Elena's eyes hardened. But not the way you think. The data isn't in that warehouse. It never was. That was a test, to see who would come looking for it. Isla's heart sank. So everything we've been working toward has led you exactly where I needed you. Elena looked at Rodrigo. You're good, Corvina. Better than most. You actually figured out the Valente connection, got close to the truth. But you made one critical mistake. What's that? Rodrigo's hand moved slowly toward his concealed weapon. You fell in love with my sister. Elena's smile turned sad. And love makes you predictable. Mira raised her gun, pointing it at Rodrigo this time. Last chance, Corvina. Walk away. Leave the girl to her sister. This doesn't have to end with you dead. Actually, a new voice cut through the tension, it doesn't have to end with anyone dead. A figure stepped out of the shadows behind Zolotov's men, an older man in an expensive suit, his presence commanding immediate attention. Isla recognized him from her research. Antonio Marchetti, head of one of the most powerful crime families in the country. Marchetti? Zolotov turned, his composure finally cracking. What are you doing here? Protecting my investment. Marchetti's smile was cold. You see, Victor, while you've been playing games with Corvina and chasing after old data, I've been making arrangements. The Valente collection? I bought it. All of it. Including the very interesting information about you. Zolotov's face went pale. And Elena, Marchetti continued, turning to Isla's sister, your father didn't just work for criminals. He worked for me specifically. Which means that insurance policy. It's my property now. The hell it is. Elena's hand moved toward her weapon, but Marchetti's guards were faster, a dozen red laser sights appearing on her chest. In the chaos of shifting alliances, Rodrigo moved. He pulled Isla behind a concrete barrier just as gunfire erupted. Miradov one way, Zolotov's men scattered another. Elena disappeared into the shadows with lethal grace. We need to move, Rodrigo shouted over the gunfire. Now. But Isla had seen something in the confusion, a flash of recognition when Marchetti mentioned her father's work. Wait. She grabbed Rodrigo's arm. Marchetti said he bought the collection. But the data was encrypted. There's only one way he could access it. Rodrigo's eyes widened with understanding. The key. The key. Isla looked down at her wedding ring, the Corvina family heirloom that had belonged to Rodrigo's mother. The intricate pattern she'd noticed that first morning wasn't just decoration. Your mother worked with my father. This ring isn't just a ring. Rodrigo stared at it, pieces falling into place. My mother was killed because of what she knew. And your father hid the access key in plain sight, disguised as jewelry. Which means Marchetti doesn't actually have the data yet. Isla met his eyes. But if we can decode this ring, we have leverage. Rodrigo pulled her close. Enough leverage to burn down everyone involved. Marchetti. Zolotov. Everyone. Including Elena? Isla's voice was small. Rodrigo's expression softened. That's your choice, Tesoro. Not mine. Before Isla could respond, Elena appeared in front of them, bloodied but alive. Behind her, the gunfire had stopped, an eerie silence that meant something had shifted. Baby sister, Elena said quietly, her gun hanging loose at her side. I need you to listen very carefully. Because in about 30 seconds, Marchetti's men are going to breach this position, and when they do. Elena continued, her eyes desperate, you need to choose, Isla. Me or him. Because Marchetti wants you both dead, but I can save one of you. Only one. Isla's blood turned to ice. What? I made a deal. Elena's voice cracked. Before all this started, before I knew you'd fallen in love with Corvina, I promised Marchetti something in exchange for protection. I promised him, she stopped, her face twisted with anguish. I promised him Rodrigo Corvina's life. Rodrigo's expression didn't change, but Isla felt him tense beside her. So that's what this was about. Not protecting your sister. Delivering me. Both. Elena's composure shattered completely. I could do both. Save Isla from this world and give Marchetti what he wanted. But then you two had to, she gestured wildly between them. You weren't supposed to actually marry her. You weren't supposed to fall in love. You were supposed to use her and discard her like everyone said you would. But he didn't. Isla stepped forward, her voice steady despite the chaos erupting in her chest. He protected me. Married me. Erased my memories to keep me alive when I was too stubborn to save myself. And that, a cold voice said from behind them, is exactly why you're both too dangerous to leave alive. Marchetti emerged from the shadows, flanked by a dozen armed men. In his hand was a device that made Isla's blood run cold, a scanner, the kind used to read encrypted data from physical objects. The ring, Mrs. Corvina. Marchetti held out his hand. I'd prefer to take it from your living hand, but I'm not particularly attached to that preference. Isla's fingers instinctively curled, protecting the ring. In that moment, she understood everything. The ring wasn't just a key, it was the only copy. Once Marchetti had it, he'd have absolute power over every criminal organization in the city. And everyone who knew about it would become a liability. Including her. Including Rodrigo. Including Elena. Isla, Elena said urgently, taking a step toward her sister. Please. Give him the ring. Save yourself. I'll handle everything else. By murdering Rodrigo? Isla's voice shook with fury and heartbreak. The man I love? The man who's done nothing but try to protect me? He's a criminal. Elena shouted. He's killed people, Isla. Destroyed lives. He's not the hero you think he is. Neither are you. The words erupted from Isla like a dam breaking. You let me mourn you for 3 years. You manipulated me into investigating the very world you were already part of. You made a deal to kill the man I married. Tears streamed down her face. So don't you dare stand there and tell me who the villain is, Elena. Because right now, I can't tell the difference between you and them. Elena flinched as if struck. Isla. Time's up. Marchetti raised his hand, and his men lifted their weapons. Last chance. The ring. Now. Rodrigo moved, positioning himself in front of Isla. You'll have to kill me first. That can be arranged. Marchetti's smile was reptilian. Isla's mind raced. The ring. The data. Everyone she cared about in danger. She looked at Rodrigo's back, broad and protective, ready to die for her. She looked at Elena, her sister who'd lied but claimed it was love. She looked at Marchetti, who represented everything corrupt in this city. And she made a choice. Wait. Isla stepped around Rodrigo, holding up her left hand. The ring caught the firelight, glittering like a promise and a threat. I'll give you the ring. But first, you're going to answer one question. Marchetti's eyebrow raised. I'm listening. My father. Your money launderer. Did you kill him? The silence that followed was deafening. Marchetti's expression shifted, surprise, then calculation, then something that looked almost like respect. Yes, he said simply. He tried to betray me. Tried to go to the authorities with everything he knew. So I made it look like a heart attack and moved on. He tilted his head. Why? Does it change anything? Isla's hand trembled, but her voice was steel. It changes everything. She twisted the ring on her finger, and something clicked, a mechanism hidden in the band that no one had known existed. The intricate pattern began to glow with a soft blue light, and a holographic display projected into the air between them. Names, dates, transactions. Every piece of her father's insurance policy, unlocked and visible to everyone. And at the top of the list, highlighted in red, Antonio Marchetti. Murderer. Money launderer. And according to the files now displayed for all to see, federal informant. Marchetti's face went white. His own men stared at the evidence of his betrayal. He'd been feeding information to the FBI while pretending to be one of them. "You bastard," Zolotov breathed, raising his weapon. Everything exploded into chaos. Gunfire erupted from all directions. Marchetti dove for cover. His men turned on each other, unsure who to trust. Elena screamed Isla's name. And in the confusion, someone grabbed Isla from behind, a cloth pressed over her nose and mouth. She struggled, but the chemical scent was already dragging her down into darkness. The last thing she saw was Rodrigo reaching for her, his face twisted in horror and rage. The last thing she heard was a voice, familiar but impossible, whispering in her ear, "Hello, daughter. Did you really think I'd stay dead forever?" Her father's voice. Her dead father's voice. Then darkness swallowed her whole, and the world went silent. The truth has been exposed, but at what cost? Who really dies tonight, and who's been playing dead all along? Drop your theories below because nothing is what it seems. Will Isla survive her father's twisted game, or will Rodrigo tear the city apart to find her? And the biggest question, was her father the puppet master all along, or is there someone even more dangerous pulling the strings? Bell subscribe so you don't miss part 2 dropping soon. This story is just getting started. Hit the notification bell and drop your wildest theories in the comments. Who do you think survives the night?